Hello, BookTube. Cheers. This is Sunday. Rainy. In about the 50s, I think, Fahrenheit. It's been a long, wet spring. But we did have a beautiful day for most of yesterday, and we had our library book sale, which went very well. And with that, we have a bake sale and a yard sale all around the library. And then I do Parks and Rec for the town also, and we had a fishing derby, which was great fun, but I didn't get to go to. So I wish I'd seen it. My kids did go, and they had a good time. Although my littlest, the 6-year-old, decided to hook himself. He's pointing over there at his finger, so I know where he got himself. Hey, buddy, you gonna go fishing again? Shaking his head no.
I said I'm 7.
You're 7, I'm sorry. Yikes. So anyway, I had a bit of a book haul, not all from the book sale. Again, like I say, we did really well. It's helped some friends of the library. So, but I have, over the last few weeks, managed to pile on some books. I thought I'd grab part of them, and most of them have, the ones I grabbed today have a nautical theme, for those of you who like that, and I certainly do. So I'm going to start right off. Let me get rid of my glasses so I can read. This is The Buccaneer King, the biography of the notorious Sir Henry Morgan, 1635 to 1688, by Dudley Pope. Those of you that will recognize Mr. Pope, I actually got a picture of him here on the back. He was the author of the Ramage nautical fiction novels, which are quite good. This has illustrations and maps, Dodd and Mead Company. And let me see here. This came out in 1977. This one happens to be, looks like the first American printing, which came out in 1978. So this is, you'll see there's plenty of these. With these types of books, you really want the maps. I mean, it's nice to have the images also, but one thing you really want in the maps. And this one has a little bit of a genealogical tree. Let's see if they've got any, they do have inserts of the images in the middle. Dudley Pope is a very entertaining writer, in fiction and in nonfiction. Let me read a little bit about the Buccaneer King, Sir Henry Morgan. Morgan the pirate. For hundreds of years, the name has stood for roaring broadsides, pieces of 8, skull and crossbones fluttering over a Caribbean, swarming with ruthless men and rich cargoes. It has also posed a riddle. Why did King Charles II knight such a notorious rogue at the height of his career and make him governor of Jamaica? In this definitive biography, Dudley Pope buries a legend but resurrects the daring soldier and masterly strategist who was the real Henry Morgan. So I've read plenty of Dudley Pope, and I've known about this book for a long time, and so I am glad to have it, and we'll put it on the pile of everything to read, right? Another one here is a volume. This is a paperback trade. That was hardback, obviously, of a very famous book about long-distance sailing, and this one's part of what they call the Mariner's Library from Sheridan House. Sheridan House is a publisher that does a lot of these things. I believe they did Tristan Jones and a few others. But this is Bernard Montessier, The Long Way. He was in a famous, there he is, a Frenchman, legendary sailor. Brilliant fellow, but very much an individualist. He was in a famous race, round the world race, and just kept going. Some people say he would have definitely won it. Others say we don't know until you win it. I'm with that crowd. He just kept going. Just took a left at Albuquerque and just kept going. So I'm looking forward to reading this. Let me see here. Again, with these types of books, you want to know where everybody's at. This next one is a little hardback, it's quite a bit different from the first two. This deals with the ships themselves. It's by Bjorn Landstrom. If I'm mispronouncing his name, I apologize, but it seems like I should be somewhat on track. And this is sailing ships. A beautiful little, you see my hand, it's a really odd size volume. Very tall, thin, and yet compact here. I actually really like it. Let me see here. This is Doubleday and Company Incorporated, Garden City, New York. And it looks like this was originally 69, came out in 78 in a larger format. So I'm not sure if they're referring to this as being that larger format. I love the history of ships. This thing is beautifully illustrated. I have not read it to know how well it's written. My suspicion is it would be quite good. I've heard references to this author. Have a feeling I may have read some stuff. Can't pin it down if I have. Some of these illustrations, as you can see, are colored. Then the next thing I have is again different, even though it's nautical. And I knew nothing about this book, and I was quite excited to find it. This is Naval Surgeon, The Voyages of Dr. Edward H. Cree, Royal Navy, as related in his private journals 1837 to 1856, which is quite a good run as a surgeon in the Royal Navy. Edited and with an introduction by Michael Levine, or Levine, I think it's Levine though. There's our author. This thing is, and again, the end papers with the map, so that's in charts, whatever. Well, a map is when you look at it, the chart's when you work on it. So I guess in this case it's a map. These are illustrated by the author, so you'll see some of the illustrations in here. I'll show you. They're quite good. And there he is. So this is E.P. Dutton, New York, as you just saw, and it came out in, it looks like 81, 82. This is the first American edition, so it looks like it came out in Britain prior to this, which makes sense. See if I can show you some of his illustrations. A little bit of glare there, but so let me read a little bit about it. So let's see here, the way they did it on the back here. Entrance to the Royal Navy, 1837. The Mediterranean, 1837 to 39. HMS Rattlesnake, 39 to 43. China, the first Opium War. Then we have HMS Vixen, 1843 to 6. China and the East Indies. Have England and Edinburgh University, 46 to 47. HMS Fury, 49 to 50. The Far East, Pirate Hunting, The Wedding Trip in 1852. Devon, London, Paris, HMS Odin, 54 to 6. The Baltic and the Crimean War. Now this thing has a little blurb by Anthony Brett Jones, and it has one by Eric Newby, who I immensely admired. And Newby says, this journal has everything that even the most avid armchair adventurer could ask for. A book I feel likely to become a classic of Victorian literature. So this came out a while ago, this production, which is quite something. I don't know if it did become a classic of Victorian literature or if it is considered so, but I'm looking forward to reading it. And then something on the same line, a sort of a diary at sea type of thing, but this one is multiple, I believe. It says Diaries from the Days of Sail, edited by R.C. Bell. With an introduction by Alan Villiers, who is one of the greats. If you read nautical nonfiction, you probably read Alan Villiers. So this is Holt, Reinhardt, and Winston, New York, and it came out in 74. And so we have the journals of American Journey by C.H. Clarke, China and Back by Alexander Whitehead, and Clipper to Adelaide by Edward Lacey. The three diaries in this book describe a way of life which is past forever. The writers came from different social backgrounds, and their journeys contrast in purpose. Together, they give the vivid impression of what it was like to travel by sea in the 19th century. So, in 1834, C.H. Clarke is a young man of leisure making a grand tour, but instead of the more usual progress through the capital cities of Europe, he chose to travel to North America. After crossing the Atlantic under sail to Quebec, he continued by steamer to Montreal, then by coach and again by steamer to Toronto. He visited Niagara and then went by horse-drawn boat along the Erie Canal to Rochester and Utica. In Schenectady, he left the canal and continued by railroad to Albany and visited Philadelphia, Baltimore, and Washington before sailing back from New York to Liverpool. His journey of some 11,000 miles had taken him about 4.5 months. That's a pretty good clip for back then. Alexander Whitehead was a cabin boy. It looks like he was from Northumbria. And then Edward Lacey was going to Australia. So I like reading these types of diaries. If they've been picked for these things, they're usually quite entertaining. So we're looking forward to that. Then the next one's a volume I've known about for years and always wanted. And that's Sailing Days on the Penobscot by Wasson and Colcord. And that Colcord is Lincoln Colcord, and I've worked on his archives in the past. This is Penobscot Bay. I spent a good portion of my life there. And this is the river and bay as they were in the old days. Salem, Massachusetts, Marine Research Society, 1932. And much of this is the story. Penobscot Bay is, if you look at the coast of Maine, Portland's here, Penobscot, Bar Harbor, all that right in here, and then down east, the farthest portion until you get to Canada. And I'm simplifying things, but you get the point. Bangor, at the headwaters of the Penobscot, was at one time the lumber capital of the world, and all that wood came out of the main forest, and the seagoing vessels that would come up the Penobscot were just quite amazing. It was also a very famous railroad town because there was stuff going on. So I've read parts of this already, couldn't stay away, and it's wonderful. You probably remember I mentioned, if you watched it, Wanderer by Sterling Hayden. Hayden goes up to Searsport, Maine, which is out just south of Bangor on the Penobscot, and meets up with the second author on this, Lincoln Colcord, which was a big deal to him at the time. So that's a different video. Then the next one's back to being a paperback, or sort of a small trade. Between the Devil and Deep Blue Sea, Merchant Seaman, Pirates, and the Anglo-American Maritime World, 1700 to 1750, by Marcus Rediker. This is going to be a little hard because it's covered with this plastic. You can see where it's sort of working its way loose, which is fine. I can always fix it if I need to. This was Cambridge University Press. Here's the title page. And it came out in 1987. The first paperback's 89, which this is. This is won the winner of the American Studies Association's John Hope Franklin Prize, co-winner of the Organization of American Historians Merle Curdy Social History Award. So here's a little brief on it. Human empathy, brilliant technique, an elegant pen, and a vivid imagination enrich Rediker's double tale. We read of seamen, captains, and pirates gone out to sea. We read of the expanding world economy which drew them back and forth across its churning waves. Professor Rediker reveals the daily lives of elusive wage laborers who escaped the historian's grasp. Jack Tar wandered to and fro. London, Sierra Leone, the Bahamas, Boston, New York, and Charleston. He knew them all. He worked hard, died young, and he left no trace of his unmarked grave beneath the sea. But this book is no romantic vision of salty mates. Jack Tar meets high seas and mighty winds. He also met authority, discipline, and inequities. A worker afloat, he found himself caught between the devils of capitalism and the dangers of the deep blue sea. This is a portrait of 18th century working men resisting authority and discipline, deserting bullying captains, creating their own dances and shanties, magic and religion, language and rituals, and even occasionally frolicking with young women they called well-rigged. One can expect to learn from this book and be well entertained by it. So I probably should have read that before I read that. So one I've heard about and want to read. Then this is an old thing. Shackleton in the Antarctic by Marjorie and James Fisher. Old hardback here, you see it. And this, now there's the end maps on that, which are a little unique, right? Heavy thing. This is Riverside Press out of Cambridge, Houghton Mifflin Company, Boston, 1958. And let's see if we get some images here. Yeah, we've got plenty of them, which is probably why the book is so heavy. So Shackleton is a quite legendary figure. There have been many, many books written about his ordeal with the Endurance. Here it is in the ice. Many of the books about this have been quite good. I have never read this particular volume, but I have seen it in the bibliographies of ones I have read. So it looks like it was a pretty standard work. So I'm looking forward to this. So this is a tale of the sea, but it's also a tale of the geographic poles. And then this last one, I mentioned earlier we had an introduction by Alan Villiers. And Villiers was a legend. If you ever saw that old National Geographic book about the sea, he was the editor. And this is quite a nice volume. I have quite a few of his books, maybe 10 or 12, but he was quite prolific. He absolutely loved the sea, fell in love with it as a young boy. And this is very, very attractive. I love this dust jacket. There he is. It's a picture you often see. This, again, has the end papers that are sort of helpful. It's about Captain Cook. There's some of the books at the time of this writing that he had been involved with. And here is the Nathaniel Dance image of Captain Cook, which you see in quite a lot of books about Captain Cook. And I'm in the middle of reading quite a few of those right now. I've just seemed to be on a roll with it. This came out in 1967, so it's a biography of Captain Cook. So Alan Villiers has been sailing on, commanding, studying, and writing about full-rigged ships nearly all his life. He was born in Melbourne, Australia in 1903. At the age of 15, he sailed away on a square rigger. Except for a brief period spent whaling in the Antarctic, he never left sailing ships. And in 1935, he started his trip around the world as commander of the famous Joseph Conrad, the last full-rigged ship around Cape Horn. Captain Villiers is the author of scores of books on sailing and the sea. Readers of Captain James Cook should particularly enjoy Posted Missing, which I do have, a collection of factual stories of ships lost without a trace at sea. So, of course, this gentleman's from not just previous generation, but several generations ago. But he was probably the last of the great large sailing ship captains and sailors. So he's able to bridge that gap so we understand a little bit. The mindset has changed, certainly, in the world. We look at things a little differently, but for skill, pure raw heroism and adventure and looking towards what to them was the unknown, I mean, I'll be reading this in a comfortable chair, but he was at sea, so I'm looking forward to this. So that's just a bit of a nautical book haul. I've got tons of more books, well, not tons, but I've got plenty more books to show you that I've hauled over the last month or two. So I hope everyone's had a good weekend, and we'll talk to you soon, I hope. Thank you, BookTube.